So this appears just a little bit out of whack right now. Let's go ahead and take this image and put it in the middle of the column to start with. So if we go through our style sheets, you'll see, in fact, they've put the image information right there in the front, entry content image. So this is entry content is for each of the posts on the main page, and image is for the generic image. And then it has actually a set of them for a line left, a line right, depending on what gets thrown in there. But by default, we want to go ahead and use the same controls as align center. So I'll just go ahead and make that for all images by default, so that it'll include margin left and margin right of auto. In fact, we can save some space there by just kind of taking those out and instead doing margin 0 auto. And then displaying it as a block. And what clear both does is make sure that we go to a new line so that it's spaced out and the text begins below that. So let's take a look and see what that does. That moves that to the center. It's going to look bad in some browsers, notably IE, but I would like to, in my original drawing, I had this sketched out as being 2 columns. Now the CSS3 column codes really only work in WebKit and Firefox, Mozilla and WebKit browsers, but for those who have it, we can go ahead and use it. And again, I'm going to cheat here and copy and paste and save myself some typing, but I'll explain to you what each of the pieces are. So entry content is this piece right here. That's a paragraph in it, and then the whole thing is entry content. So if we want to change what's happening on in the entry, we do it here. And really, I've just repeated the same pair of things 3 times. Column count of 2 and column gap of 1em. And I've done it for Moz for Mozilla browsers, WebKit for WebKit browsers. At least for now, it's not supported except as specialized tags. But in case that happens sometime in the near future, I've gone ahead and put those properties in. I've also done text-align justify, which is an old CSS2 tag. Justify means that it's not left justified or right justified, but full justified. It's like what you see in a newspaper. And in fact, I'm using a new tag called text justify newspaper, which does basically it does a little bit better a job at justifying the text than the old version did, because it increases both the space between words and within words, so that it does a better job of justifying the text. And I've added in just a little extra line height to give it a little more space. Let's see what that does. Alright, this is in Chrome, and Chrome actually is supporting this, so you'll see that it's given us a 2-column layout. I might actually increase that gap just a little bit, make it 2em instead of 1. Yeah, because it's a little crowded right now. So that's good. I kind of like the box over here, but I want to simplify it further. I want to just do one side of it, and we know how to do that. We just need to figure out what the box over there is. So there it is right there. It's UL class XOXO. But if you look over here, you'll see we've got margin, we've got padding. Where does the border come in? Border 0, none. Well, it's not that says the border, then it must be primary. There we go. Primary has a 1 pixel solid. Well, we want to go ahead and kind of override that, and to do that we're going to have to say border none and then add in just the 1 pixel solid on the left hand side. So let's go ahead and do that. I may not have talked a lot about this process of overriding. In fact, it gives it those instructions, and later instructions kind of overwrite the older instructions. But we can do that by kind of just continuing to write in this one style file, and we're basically overwriting old files. And now I've forgotten what we're calling that, primary. So we can do a quick primary, and we can say border none, and then, because that zaps our border, and then we can say border left 1 pixel solid CCC. We'll update that. We need to refresh this. I might do a little bit more fiddling with that. I might actually go with a dotted line. Now we've got one more piece right here, which is we need to, in the original specs, I wanted to do something a little bit like a magazine layout where I did the whole first article on the front page, but I want the later articles to be different. So how is it that we can kind of, since these are all that same, if we go back here, oops, wrong one. If we go here, we've done that by using entry content. If those are all entry content, how do we distinguish between the first and the later ones? Luckily, in this theme, the theme that's set up, it's been designed so that it generates as much labeling as possible, so it's easy to control through CSS. So if we go over here and we take a quick look, we'll see, if we take a look at this entry, we'll go up here, you'll see that it's been loaded with a whole bunch of classes. We've got an H entry, a P1, a post, a publish, who the author is, what the category is, which will be useful later on, what the tags are, if there are any, whether the comments are open, all kinds of, what year it was published in, all kinds of classes that we can use as hooks for CSS. And if you look, one of them, it's P1 for post 1. If we go down to the next post, you'll see it's here's a whole bunch of classes again, and that's P2, P3, P4. So what we can do is we can set one up for everything and then set up a special one just for the first one. And so what I want is for the first one to be in this 2-column format, and for the next ones to have the text be a little bit smaller and have it be straight across instead of in 2 columns. So let's see if we can do that. So now what we're going to do is start with just a little bit smaller. So I'll set that up. Entry content is, we'll do a quick font size, and we'll do it about 80%. Alright, so all I've said is make it smaller for entry content generally, but for P1 entry content, that is for that first one, we want to have all of this stuff happen, and we also want the font size to be 100%. Line height and the justification we want for all of it. So put that up here. Alright. So basically what I've said is for all entry content, I want it to be a smaller font size, I want it to be justified, newspaper style, I want it to be a little bit higher line height. Well, it's actually, I'm not sure I want the line height for everything, so I want it to be justified, newspaper style. But then in this particular case of paragraph 1 entry content, I want this to be 2-column count. So does that make sense? We start out by setting it for everything, and then we say after that, we say in this particular case we want it to be this way. If these were reversed, this stuff would overwrite this stuff. But because this is later in the CSS file, and it's saying in particular I'm talking about P1 entry content, that is stuff that has both of those class labels. Therefore I can kind of differentiate. Let's make sure this actually works. Now, as I expected, this shouldn't actually change anything up here, but then when we get to the other ones, you'll see that it's smaller and it goes all the way across. And in fact, I'm going to go into the template and make it so that it is that it's shorter. That is, that it cuts off and is a jump to the inside pages. And I'm going to take out any of these images so that once this bounces off the front, it will not show images in these later ones. And I'm going to actually do some fancy stuff later on with sort of coded images so that we can see what things are about, what categories they're in. So that's what's coming up there. I need to do a little bit more text work. I need to make this a little bit smaller, I think. I need to take out the underlining on these links because this whole thing underlined is hard to read. Probably take out the bullet points too. So I've got some little tweaking that I still need to do, but generally speaking, I think I have the text part of this set up.